Hello, this is Dr. Newberry, and I'm going to be going over some methods to deconstructing medical terms. All right, so we're going to start off first here with our term cardiac. Um, One thing you want to make sure you have available is the medical term list. This will help find those different word parts as we go through the deconstruction. So I have that available. I have my term here that I want to define, which is cardiac. The first thing I want to do is find the root of the word. Since the root is always going to be there, there's always going to be a root or a combining form. Once you find that, then you can make a slash, and then you can continue figuring out the other parts of the word. So in this case, I know that cardi looks familiar because that probably means heart. So I'm going to go here and just kind of search for that. You can just do Control F and then search for part of it. Okay, it looks like there's a couple here, but this is the one I want to find. Okay, so I found it on the list. Okay, cardio. I jump back to my term here and I see that I have cardi and I don't have the cardio. So I'm just going to put a slash there and then come down here and say my root is going to be cardi, and that is equal to the heart. Okay. And the reason I'm not using the combining form listed here, it's because it has that O, and in the actual term itself, the next word part begins with a vowel, so I don't need to use that combining vowel, and I'll just use the root. All right, so then what's left is the AC, and I assume that that's a suffix, but I'll just confirm it here by going back to my word list. It's probably going to be a bunch of ACs, so that might not be the best way to do it. So instead, let me come down to the place in the word list that goes through suffixes, and I go through here, okay, and I see that there is a dash AC, which means pertaining to. So then I can add that in, hyphen AC equals pertaining to. So then the full definition of cardiac will be pertaining to the heart. All right. Next term I'll take a look at here is going to be gastroscopy. Once again, I'm going to see if I can find a root here and look at gaster. I know that that one means stomach, but I'll check my list. Okay, and here I found it. Okay, and then if I jump back to my term here, I'm going to find gaster is going to be the root, and then the O is going to be my combining vowel. And I can confirm that here. I see gaster is that root, and then it has that slash O, which is the combining vowel. So in this case, the word part that's present is going to be the combining form. Of gaster O, which still means stomach. All right, then the last part here, last word part is most likely going to be the suffix. And here it's just scopy. So if I go back to my word list, go back to the place where it has the suffixes listed, I'll come through here and see if I can find scopy. And sure enough, there it is. I'll just grab that definition and jump back to my document here. So my suffix is going to be dash scopy, which is going to be the process of using an instrument to examine visually. All right, so if I put that all together, all right, I'll define this term gastroscopy as the process of using an instrument to visually examine the stomach. Okay, it's a decently long definition. All right, now let's look at this next one, bradycardia. I can see that cardi is in there, and I already defined that one earlier, so I do know that that one means, that's going to mean heart. But it looks like I also have this term in front of it, Brady. So I'm not sure what that means. So why don't I go to my list and see if I can find it. Brady. All right. And I find by doing this, that is actually a prefix that means slow. So if I come back to my document here, okay, I'll start off by saying that there is a prefix, and that prefix is Brady, which means slow. I've already defined cardi earlier, and cardi is going to mean heart. I'll come up here and add some slashes to separate those. And then I've got my my suffix here is just Okay. If I try to take a look at this though, in the suffixes, this will kind of show something that can come up. So there's no suffix that's just but instead what can happen is there is ia. And ia is a very common suffix that's going to be used when talking about conditions. So what happened here was that the suffix is actually ia, which means condition. But because cardi ends in an I and ia begins with an I, what happens is they essentially just combine and one gets removed. So in this case, we'll just have the root being cardi, and then the suffix would be ia, but once again, once you put it in there, you essentially drop that I because it's a duplicate vowel. So then the definition of this would be a condition of a slow heart. And we can kind of put in parentheses here as heart rate because this is one of those conditions that the heart or the heart rate is essentially what it's talking about. All right, so there's a few takeaways from doing this whole process. One thing that I want to draw your attention to is that when you define a medical term, the beginning of the medical term is going to be the definition of the suffix. So as an example for that, we saw that in cardiac, up above, we define the term as pertaining to, we got that part of the definition from the suffix AC. In gastroscopy, we saw that the definition for the entire term started with the process of using an instrument to visually examine, which was the definition of the word part, scopy, which was the suffix. Then we get to bradycardia, and we see here that it's a condition of a slow heart rate. Okay, so what that means is that we started with the full definition being condition, then we had slow, which was from Brady, which was the prefix, and then we had the definition of the root, which was cardi. All right, so what that tells us is that when you're defining medical terms, the sequence of word parts that you'll use, it will first start off with the definition of the suffix. So whatever your definition of your suffix, that should be the first part of your definition for the full term. Then you have to look. If you have a root, say for instance in cardiac, the root here was heart. Okay, that's all we have left. So we'll end up just ending that definition of the medical term as pertaining to the heart. But in words that you have both a suffix and a prefix, then what you'll do is you'll first start out with using the definition of the suffix, then you're going to use the definition of the prefix, then you're going to use the definition of the roots or combining forms, okay, as we saw in bradycardia. All right, next we'll take a look at the process of actually constructing medical terms.